This episode of A Conversation with John Conenna is sponsored by Generate. In today's digital age, staying ahead means harnessing the power of generative AI. Wondering how your small or medium-sized business can join this revolution? Look no further than Generate, your strategic partner for integrating cutting-edge generative AI solutions. We create personalized plans, adapting existing AI technologies to fit your specific business needs. Plus, our expert team provides essential training, empowering you to make the most of these innovative technologies. Interested in transforming your business with AI? Reach out to us at generateteam@gmail.com. That's generate, GENERAIT, team@gmail.com. And now, on with the episode.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. This morning's a real treat for me. We go down another road, a road that I like. I wish I could have played it better. I was more of a hockey player, but it's a game that I really enjoyed watching, but it touched the heart of me because I get to go back to a gentleman that it's really the first time I'm seeing him face to face. We've talked many times on the phone because our fathers knew each other, but this morning it gives me a great pleasure to bring in the 2015 Illinois Basketball Hall of Fame inductee, head coach of Northridge Prep, Will Ray. Will's resume is second to none. He's coached over 40 years here in Illinois, and we could go back to the days of Gordon Tech. I ran into some guys who remembered him from Gordon Tech. And of course, we talk about St. Mary's, we talk about Wright, we talk about Evansville. And then, of course, I got my chance and my big break to find out that he coached my old alma mater, the Loyola Ramblers, from 1989 to 1994. Will, thank you for coming on. And like I said, it gives me great pleasure. And what is going on with you, young man? Because you are truly, truly what they say about you, a passionate educator. Good morning and welcome.
Thanks, John. Well, it's a real treat to do this conversation with you, this podcast. And typically I am fortunate enough to have opportunities to do quite a few of these over the course of a year, but mostly they're X's and O's and talking about offenses and defenses and things of that nature. And
right,
this one I really cherish the opportunity because it's great to have an opportunity to converse with an old friend, especially since our dads knew each other so well. And once you and I reconnected here, it's been really it's brought back a lot of fond memories, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
How does it start for you? Because of course, and I forgot to tell our audience here early on too. Of course, you are a graduate of Holy Cross High School. I was a graduate of Holy Cross High School. How does it start for you in the sense of this game called basketball and how you got this passion? I mean, did you play at Cross?
Yeah, you know what? Interestingly enough, I was a journeyman player at best and didn't play. It's interesting. Holy Cross has 3 Hall of Fame coaches that were not basketball players at Holy Cross, and it's kind of interesting how my my first love was baseball. Baseball was my sport. I loved it. I'm Cuban, right? It's
Sure.
it's part of the birthright. You're either into baseball or boxing, which my dad was into both.
Oh.
And I started playing basketball in grade school and loved the game. I love sports in general. Always playing whatever the seasonal sport was at that time. And just love the competition and love the game itself. And so I got involved in coaching when I was in college. I had an opportunity. One of my closest high school friends from Holy Cross, Jim Innocenti, graduated with me, and he was a football player, and he was actually coaching a football team at Shabona Park.
All right, over here by my office.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, and he asked me one day, so look, I need some help. Can you come and help me? We're both in college. He said, can you come and help me? And I said, sure. And so I didn't know anything about football really. And so he said, here's what you do in this drill and what you do in that drill. And and I did. And actually, Jim and I were very close. He ended up being the best man at my wedding. And but then right about that time, I got word from a friend that a local grade school, Catholic grade school, was looking for a basketball coach, for an 8th grade basketball coach. And so I said something to Jimmy in the second about it. He goes, well, why don't you go do it? You love basketball, you play basketball. So that started the journey. And that was probably, I don't know, geez, it must have been like 1973 or something. I'm not even, I don't remember. I was in the middle of college. And so I would go to classes during the day. And then after my class were finished, I'd go over and coach the 8th grade basketball team. And I did that until I graduated from college, and then got my first opportunity. Actually, our team was playing in a lot of the local high school tournaments, and we were playing in a Gordon Tech tournament. And
Okay.
the coaches at Gordon Tech saw our team play. They liked the fact that we were very aggressive and played man-to-man defense and what have you. And the next thing you know, John, I'm coaching at Gordon Tech, and that was the start of just a great career that I have absolutely no regrets. I think next year will be my 48th year, I believe.
48th year.
I think 48 years.
Wow. Well, I mean, when you talk about that, this all starts, right, like you said, from this grammar school situation. I got to ask you, I believe in the destiny and the timing is everything kind of thing in the life. So, I mean, it was Gordon Tech that first, like, okay, I know the grammar school thing is, I mean, there's some great grammar school things that go on because this is the lead up, but Gordon Tech, this is in 1977, I think.
77, I believe it was. Yeah, 77. And the thing is that I really, what kind of led me to that point was the fact that once I started coaching grade school basketball, I started meeting a lot of people in the world of basketball coaching, right? So I met some high school coaches. Norm Goodman at Leiden High School was one, because a couple of the players that I coached in 8th grade ended up playing at Leiden. And he was at East Leiden at the time. And Norm was amazing. I was 19 years old, 20 years old. And he had a clinic at East Leiden for the local grade school coaches. I went to this clinic, first clinic I ever attended. And Norm Goodman came up to me. I mean, here's this legendary high school basketball coach. And he took me under his wing and really helped me start professionally. And I think of Norm often. And he was a great influence to me. Bill Gleason at Loyola Academy was another. Bob Osipka at Gordon Tech. So I got to know these high school coaches as a result of coaching 8th grade basketball. And then I just took an interest I figured, well, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it as well as I can do it. And just started attending clinics and talking to coaches and learning how to coach the game.
And you know what, Will, I'm glad because you're kind of taking me away from like these now, that era, 77 to 80, you had St. Joe's with Gene Pignatore. You had, of course, Isaiah was in the league at that time, Holy Cross, St. Pat's, DeSales, your team, the Gordon Tech team. You were in a hotbed of some of the greatest players that ever played this game. And I'm sure that had to be like, you were put right into the fire with this, right?
No question, John. And, you think about 1970, it's funny. One of the great players at St. Pat's High School who graduated in 1975 was Emmett McGovern. And I work with him now at Northridge. He's our dean of students. And Emmett was, at the time, he was one of the top high school players in Chicago, and one of the top high school players in the state of Illinois. Wow. Actually went to DePaul. Anyway, but we reminisce often, like two old guys do. We tend to sit around and talk about the good old days. But that era of basketball in the mid-'70s through probably the early to mid-'80s, I mean, it was an incredibly strong high school basketball era in the Chicago area. I mean, 1979, you had Mark Aguirre, you had Glenn Rivers, Isaiah Thomas. I mean, these are the players that we coached against. And when I was at Gordon Tech, we played against those teams, right? And so, some of those guys were great NBA players in their own right. So it was a great time. And for me, as a young coach cutting my teeth in the profession, you'd see all these really, outstanding high school players and having a chance to see them in the summer and coach against them. It was like nothing else I had ever experienced. And then really, John, the big moment for me beyond getting started with these great local high school
Sure.
coaches was a guy by the name of Jerry Wainwright, who eventually became the head coach at DePaul University, is still a dear friend of mine to this day. And Jerry was Norm Goodman's assistant at East Leiden, and we became very close friends. Well, Jerry introduced me to the five-star basketball camp in 1980. And so I went out to the five-star basketball camp as a young coach. And now I was not only thrust into, a basketball hotbed locally, I was thrust into a high school and college basketball hotbed nationally. So now I got to know the Rick Pitino's and the Hubie Browns and the Chuck Daly's and
Krzyzewski, right? And Krzyzewski also, I think.
Mike Krzyzewski.
Yeah.
And so my interest in my motivation for coaching really took a strong footing at that point. Once I got into the five-star basketball camp, it was like nothing I had ever experienced. And people to this day say that there's never been a greater basketball atmosphere for coaches and players than existed at five-star. And I was at five-star basketball camp for 30 years as a summer resident coach and lecturer. And so I really cut my teeth locally with the great high school coaches in Illinois and in the Chicago area specifically. But then at the five-star basketball camp, it was an opportunity to go to the PhD level.
You're taking that to the next level. This is
the next level. It was amazing. And to this day, I mean, we're all products of our environments and products of our experience and the mentoring that we receive in life. And professionally, the mentoring I got from the local high school coaches in Chicago was only augmented by what I experienced at five-star. So I've been blessed. I've been blessed beyond description.
Well, again, blessed in the sense of these people saw your work ethic. I mean, listen, I didn't come into this interview naked. I mean, when I say that, I mean, I saw what you did over the years, how we'll talk about that 31 defense, the 1-3-1, everything that you've done. And I got to go back to Wainwright. You, of course, remember those two great players. One was an announcer here in Chicago, Grunwald and Dorr, who dominated East Leiden at one time. It's like
right. Oh yeah,
to a Bulls game.
and I was sitting. The thing is, John, as a young coach, because of Norm Goodman's generosity, Norm Goodman was just a dear, beloved friend of mine. He mentored me. I mean, rarely does a day go by in practice where something doesn't come to mind that Norm either said or taught me, right? But I would sit there and watch practice with Tom Dorr, Glenn Grunwald, John Hendler, who went played at Wake Forest. Those teams in the mid-'70s that he had and Norm was just an outstanding coach. Well ahead of his time. In fact, I remember he had opportunities to go on to college coaching. Joe B. Hall at Kentucky tried to hire him. Bill Cofield at Wisconsin tried to hire him. And Norm just was a high school coach. He said, no, this is where I belong. I'm doing what I need to be doing. And actually, when I left college coaching in 2004, I spoke with Norm about that. I said, Norm, I'm thinking about leaving Division I coaching after 19 years to come back to high school. And he said, well, it took you 19 years to finally figure it out, right? And that's exactly that's how Norm was. Norm loved high school coaching, and he was really, really good at it.
You went on to be, of course, assistants at Crete. And were you an assistant at Fenwick, or were you the head coach at Fenwick?
I was a head coach at Crete and Fenwick both.
And Fenwick. And again,
So I was an assistant at Gordon Tech for, I guess, 4 years. And then I left Gordon in 1980. I worked for Dan Shabrillo and for Bob Osipka. Bob, again, a great mentor of mine. Bob is an incredible basketball coach and even better person. But Bob was a great friend and great mentor even to this day. We talk often. And then I left there in 1980, became the head coach at Crete Moni for 2 years. And then I came back to Fenwick High School as the head coach for 3 years, I believe it was. And then I left high school coaching in 1985 when I had the opportunity to be on Jim Cruz's staff at the University of Evansville.
And that was the Evansville. They said, and I got to tell you, that other school that you just brought up, Fenwick, which has been a hotbed for any kind of sports. I mean, just incredible. Because, you know, when I was at Holy Cross, I was playing hockey at Holy Cross, and I was like, it's like, how does this Fenwick school get the better players for hockey? You know, but
yeah, at the time that I was at Fenwick, the basketball program had really gone through some difficult times. But the football program had finished second in the state the year before I got there. The baseball program was strong. Wrestling was strong. All the programs were strong. Soccer, cross country, track and field. And the basketball program had an incredible tradition of success. And then it kind of dipped for about 3 or 4 years. And I came in as a result of that. I was hired to hopefully turn the program around, and we did. By the time I left there, we had a winning season, and left behind some good players that eventually my successor was John Quinn, who was there as the head coach for 30 years. And
wow,
he had a lot of success, Coach Corey Baghetti, and took the team down to the state finals and so on. So yeah, great tradition of Fenwick athlete, a great tradition both academically and athletically. John, they really in those years were
incredible,
very top in both areas. So anyway, it continued to be that to this day.
You know, and Will, I want to stop you there because I've coached hockey here at the amateur level in Illinois. And I got to tell you, I don't know how it has been for you coaching at the level that you coached at college, high school, all the levels that you've coached at. It's not about putting a suit on, walking down the sidelines. You've been at this for 48 years, coaching and teaching. People think that a coach, I still think in this day and age, and correct me if I'm wrong, they think a coach is just a rah-rah guy. Oh yeah, let me put my 5 out there. They're just going to wing it around and take a 3 when you want, jam it when you want. I have seen what you have come up with and how people have respected, and this resume is unbelievable. Tell us a little bit about how this game evolves before we talk about, I want to talk about your collegiate career, of course, but how this evolved in the sense of you had to learn things every year because this game is ever changing, correct?
Absolutely. And, the game has gone through significant changes just in my tenure as a coach. John, I see my role as that of an educator. I mean, people don't realize, and you said it so well, it's not just about putting on a suit and being a cheerleader. I mean, far from it. As a coach in any sport, I mean, you follow the laws of learning as closely, or maybe even more closely than someone does in a classroom setting.
Sure.
You have to have pedagogy and teaching methodologies, and how do you teach a skill? How do you present new material to a group? And the thing is, it's not just teaching the sport of basketball in this case, but it's also the mental aspect of it, and the psychological aspect, and the emotional, the bringing a team together. One thing is teaching one young person how to do math or science or history, and that in itself is a challenge. But sure, imagine having to teach your subject area to a group of people, and then you have to bring them together so they can function as a cohesive unit. I mean, so it's not just about one player teaching him how to shoot a jump shot or how to dribble a basketball. It's about doing that, plus bringing a group of people together and getting them to defer to each other, dealing with all the human emotions and the side of the things that enter into the team play, I mean, so to me, a coach is an educator in the purest sense of the word. The word education comes from the Latin root educare, which means to bring out, to bring forth out of someone. So imagine trying to bring forth not only out of an individual, but bring that group of individuals together and bring forth their best. It's an incredible challenge, and anyone who doesn't anybody who looks at that as lightly doesn't understand, hasn't been in the arena.
Exactly. Because I've always been against the parent or somebody coaching from the stands. Forget about what Ray's telling you. Do it this way. Just take it down the court, jam it, do whatever you have to do. But you are teaching what you believe in, and you can transpose this to this team. This has been tremendous in your resume here that I looked at. I go, wow, you had a confidence everywhere you went. Well, really, tell me if I'm, because the record speaks for itself. I'm not even looking at the wins and losses, because at Northridge here, of course, you've had a dominant career, but it's not about the wins and losses. It's what these kids are going to take to the next level, correct?
Absolutely. And that's been what's kept me in coaching for as long as I've been in it, is that, and really, John, when I got into coaching, again, when I was coaching those 8th grade teams as a college student myself, I did it because the sports experience had been so important and formative in my life, and the coaches that I had had along the way had impacted me in so many different ways as I was trying to develop, myself as a man, and I learned a lot from the 2 greatest influences that I've had in my life. Of course, my father, one, and then number 2 is the coaches that I've had along the way, both when I was involved as an athlete, but also when I was involved as a young coach coming up the ranks. And so it's not about the wins and losses. At the end of the day, listen, are we going to make any apologies for winning or trying to prepare our teams to learn how to be successful and win on a court? Absolutely not. But there's an overarching purpose to this. And if a young man is not a better person or a better man at the end of the season for having played on that team than he was at the beginning, then something's amiss, right? Regardless of the numbers of wins, championships, trophies, it's all about character development and about helping a young person understand himself, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, what does he have to do to become the kind of man that's going to be a great husband one day, a great father, a great professional in whatever career he goes into. He's going to be a great citizen, a member of his church, of his neighborhood, whatever it might be. So the lessons and there's nothing more rewarding now that I've had a chance to do this for a number of years. Eventually, or occasionally rather, I get these emails, right? Or I'll get a text message from a former player who now is a father and a husband, or maybe he has his own challenges in his professional work. He's in charge of a department and he's trying to motivate his employees, and he'll come back and send me an email saying, "Hey, I remember when you said this. Well, heck, I don't remember what I said, 20 years ago. I don't remember what I said yesterday, let alone 20 years ago." But you realize that the impact that, I coach for impact. I don't coach for wins and championships. And again, I'm not apologizing for striving for those things. We want to have good teams,
right?
But if we're not trying to reach the hearts of young people and help shape their path in life, then I think we've missed the greatest opportunity that athletics can bring.
After 48 years, I got goosebumps when you were talking, because when somebody comes up to you in that restaurant or that email, like you said, or whatever, Mr. Ray, Coach Ray, that for me is, our championship in life, that somebody remembered something you said in that huddle or in the locker room before the game or after the game, or can I talk to your coach privately? And now he's taken it to his life, with his family and everything else. Fantastic. I want to get to right after Evansville, because that's the time, because I had went to Loyola University and of course graduated in the early 80s. And I find out that they're going to hire a guy named Will Ray. And your father, the great Wilfredo Ray, and I'll use that word great because that's who he was. I said, it's gotta be Wilfredo's son. I ran into his office and I says, Mr. Ray, is Will Ray your son? He says, absolutely. I go, I need to know more about this. So why don't you tell us about that? Because that had to be a great moment. Again, right place, right time. And they saw what you could bring to the table. 1989, Loyola University.
Right. Yeah. John, I had been at the University of Evansville for 4 years with Jim Cruz, 1985 to 1989. And listen, Jim Cruz, he played for Bob Knight on the 1976 still undefeated national championship team, right? And he coached with Coach Knight for 8 years. And I had gotten to know Jim through through my coaching career and in high school and camps and so forth. And when Jim took the job at the University of Evansville, getting that phone call from him to offer me a job, he asked my wife and I. We had our daughters were two little girls at the time. And I was at Fenway. He said, "Come on down for the weekend and like to talk to you about this job." And we did. And those 4 years for me were incredible. I mean, Jim was an incredible teacher of the game. Really knew how to bring out the best in his players. And so we had a lot of success. And we took over the Evansville program when it was really down. And within 2 years, we were competing for the conference championship. In the third year, we were in the NIT. In the fourth year, we were in the NCAA tournament, ranked 25th in the country. And we were playing in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So as an assistant coach, you're only as hot, so to speak, as your head coach, right? And Jim was being sought after for many jobs at that time. I won't mention the schools, but he was entertaining 4 or 5 different major college jobs in 1989. Well, as his assistant, I had people inquiring about me, right? And it wasn't anything I had done. It was just I was part of a great organization, part of a great staff. And so I had the opportunity to interview for 3 jobs that spring, and Loyola University was one of them. And that was the job that was offered first. And so I took it. And of course, it was a chance to come back to Chicago. This is where I grew up.
Sure.
And of course, Loyola had a storied past in basketball. I replaced Gene Sullivan. Yeah, who did he had an incredible coaching career.
We're coming off the Al Frederick Hughes go Golston years.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. And those were the years where he, Gene took that team in 1981. I forget the year exactly.
83 against George.
83 against Georgetown. That's right. 1983 against Georgetown, and then lost in the Elite Eight. The Patrick Ewing's team, I think they went on and won a national championship that year. And so anyway, I followed Gene, and Gene was a real gentleman, just a wonderful guy, and always treated me very well. As did George Ireland, by the way. George Ireland had been away from Loyola for many, many years. Of course, he's the coach of the 1963 national championship team. And one of the first things I did, John, when I got to Loyola, besides connecting with Gene, of course, and Petey Line, who was the coach between George Ireland and Gene Sullivan, besides connecting with those 2 coaches that were my predecessors, I actually reached out to George Ireland. And George had been kind of apart from the university for many, many years. And, my secretary came into my office a couple of times, said, there's a gentleman that keeps calling for you. And when I ask him, who is it? He hangs up the phone. And I said, geez, that's strange. I said, well, next time he calls, just put him through, And lo and behold, he calls again. And she says, look, hang on 1 second. Runs into my office, says, that gentleman's on the phone again, and he wants to talk to you. And I said, okay, great, put him through, right? Well, it was George Ireland.
Oh, wow.
And so George didn't want to identify himself on the phone. So George, anyway, I had a wonderful conversation with him. Actually, I had written him a letter. That's what prompted the phone call, actually, was I had written him a letter because I tried to reach out to him and couldn't. So I wrote him a letter and just told him, I said, look, I just want you to know how honored I am to have the opportunity to walk into the gym every day at Alumni Hall. And I am able to coach my team on the same floor where you crafted a national championship squad in 1963. Well, I never heard back from him, but he started making these phone calls, and eventually we connected by phone, and we met in person. And George was just absolutely delightful. He was a treasure trove of information. And then eventually he came back to the university, which was wonderful to see, because I was there in '93 when they had the I guess it would have been the 30-year reunion.
It was the
Of,
30-year. Yeah.
yeah, of the national championship. In fact, we played Purdue that day at the Horizon, and that night we had the big 30-year reunion dinner up in Rosemont. And we played Purdue and actually won the game, which was amazing. Gene Cady, a great coach, and we played exceptionally well, won that game. And that night we had the 30-year anniversary and celebration at one of the local banquet halls. And George Ireland was there, as were all the players from the, or at least the 5 starters, if I remember.
That would have been wild, Will, if you would have
Oh.
played the Cincinnati Bearcats that night.
Yeah, that would have been something. Wouldn't have been great. But anyway, so I got to know George and
Wow.
P.D. Line and Gene. They were all great to me. But at the time that I took over at Loyola, it was kind of a difficult time, and it just like anything else, John Calipari, who's a good friend, once said that administrations win championships, not coaches. And I was the coach, and I don't run away from responsibility. We couldn't quite get the program turned around. We got it to 13-16, I believe, or 14-16 one year, and made a splash. Had some big wins against Notre Dame, Purdue, Northwestern, Xavier, all these other programs that we played. But we never could quite get the corner fully turned. And so in 1994, I resigned my position and moved on and continued coaching. And I look back on it, it was a great learning experience for me. It was a tough job, and it was a tough job for a long time after I left too. It wasn't until Porter Moser really came on board and got things going. But there was a lot of changes at Loyola. There were administrative changes, there were institutional changes, and all of that goes into setting up an environment where teams can be successful. And again,
a lot of recruiting things started to change in college basketball.
Well,
too.
they did.
It was a little bit of a tricky time when you were there.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was I was there during the Prop 48 years, where there was very strict academic requirements by the NCAA in general, but Loyola, of course, being an outstanding academic institution, had even higher standards.
Sure.
And so we had to try and abide by the standards of the institution, which we did. Also try and do the best we could to attract good enough players. Anyways, we were in a very, very tough conference at the time. We were in the Horizon League when it was at its absolute highest point, with Marquette, Xavier, Evansville, Butler University, Duquesne, LaSalle, St. Louis. I mean, the conference was just brutal.
Every night was a juggernaut.
It was a juggernaut, yeah. So anyway, I don't have any regrets.
Sure.
Could I have done a better job? I'm sure. But it's like anything else. It's a group of people coming together institutionally to make programs successful. And anyway, things got better for Loyola down the road, and I'm happy to see that they're doing well and have done well in their Final Four trip recently. And Porter Moser was great. So anyway, I have no hard feelings. No, I had to live my life that way.
And like you said, Will, it took time. It took time. Because, since you left to Moser, it's been a long,
there were several coaches in between. Sure. Ken Burmeister, Larry Farmer, and others, that have gone on and tried to get it. Jim Weitzel, who did a great job in his own right, try to get the program resurrected. And it wasn't really until Porter came in and
You're St. Mary's, of course. You go on to St. Mary's, you go on to Wright State. Those were years of.
Yeah, St. Mary's, Wright State. I was at Wright State for 7 years with Ed Schilling, who's now an assistant at Grand Canyon. Ed's well-traveled, very successful college coaching career, and had 7 great years there in Dayton, Ohio. Loved Dayton. Our family loved living there. But in 2004, John, I sat down with my wife, and my son was then in 5th or 6th grade, and my daughters were a little bit older, and we just decided that it was time to get off the carousel And like I said, I called, some of my mentors in coaching, Jim Cruz, Bob Osipka,
Sure.
Goodman. And like I said, Norm said it took you 19 years to figure it out that, the best place to coach is high school. And I'm glad you find it. It took you a little bit while. It took a little while to figure it out, but you got it right. So, and now I've been at Northridge since '04.
And Will, I mean, what a run this has been at Northridge Prep. Fantastic. I mean, you've been there since '04, correct?
Yeah, I'm in my 20th year, and it's been absolutely I mean, John, a lot of times when you make a big career decision, such as I did in '04 with my family, leaving, because once you leave Division I coaching, the opportunity to come back is rare, right? Things just the dominoes have to fall perfectly to leave that level of coaching and then come back. But I thought it through carefully, prayed a lot about it, talked to my wife and family, and talked to my mentors, and we did it. And I can honestly tell you, I haven't had one day where I've regretted the decision. It's been great. A large part of the reason is because Northridge is an incredible place, and it's an all boys school, Catholic, in its direction, and it's a school founded by parents and educators. And I have just had the opportunity to be involved with great families. The players that I've coached, I've been incredibly coachable, hard workers, smart guys. And then the colleagues that I work with, my fellow colleagues, the faculty, the administrators. I work for an incredible head of school right now, Neil Fagan, and the whole administrative team. It's just been sometimes they say that God cannot be outdone in generosity. And, I really thought a lot about this and prayed hard about what would be the next move for me career-wise. Hopefully it would be the place where I would end my coaching career eventually. And this opportunity came, and I have found a great deal of fulfillment and personal happiness in the least likely of places. There was a time when I thought that, if I could get to the highest level of Division I coaching, never really had any interest in coaching professional basketball.
Right.
But I thought if I could get to the highest level of college, I'll really be happy. And, I realized that I had my ladder up against the wrong building. And so this move to Northridge was a godsend for not only me, but more so for my family. My son graduated from Northridge. I had a chance to coach him. He was a very good player at Northridge for us, still holds all the school's three-point shooting records. He goes off to the University of Notre Dame, comes back, and now he's my assistant and teaches history.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a storybook.
And I got to tell you, I still look at these two newspapers in towns, even though newspaper could be an outdated word, but you're by the Chicago sometimes, the top, you were identified as the top 50 winningest high school teams here in Illinois. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, and I see the record. When we talk about the wins now you take it to another level with that. And I got to tell you, I want to tell our audience, if you get a chance to look at this interview, and of course, Will's career. Will, I think we're gonna have to do a part 2, but I have to tell you, this 31 defense, the 1-3-1 zone that I watched it like I was that kid that wanted to go out there. It's just fantastic how you are this educator of this game. And of course, I think this other thing that I noticed was the 4-character to help coaches in their daily routine of the game. Just elaborate on that one.
I got into coaching because I wanted to somehow make an impact on kids, and I've stayed in coaching for that reason. And now as you get along in your career, you realize there's a lot of young coaches that might be looking for direction in the profession, just like I was and still am. I mean, I still do everything I can to get better and to grow professionally. So I decided to do this. I kind of adopted this coaching for character moniker. And the idea, and it's the thing is, time is always a problem, right? You have, at least in my case, I have some great ideas. It's just I can't always, push through on all of them at the same time. But I just decided that, look, I like to do something to help other coaches. So this Coaching for Character initiative has been one where I do podcasts like this. I go on a clinic speaking to tours. I've had the chance to speak at the high school coaches association clinics in about 5 or 6 different states. And again, my purpose for doing it is not, I'm not interested in any self-promotion. My interest right now is to try and give back and help others as much as I've been helped by the profession. And I want to help young coaches. And so the idea of trying to give them a philosophy and give them an approach to coaching that can hopefully keep them in the profession. Because, the thing I found, John, is if you coach only for wins and championships, that's pretty short-lived. And you can't make a lifetime profession out of just making money, for example, if you're in business. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with making money.
And well put by you, because just like everything else in our life, wins and losses and how we live our life and what could happen to all of us, it turns on that dime very, very quickly, very quickly.
I mean, the thing is, what I, hope that I have impacted to some small, just in some small way, that I've impacted the lives of others and helped them be better. And because that has helped me be better. And that's, and I've made a lot of mistakes. I haven't always, said the right thing or, coached the right way. And I've grown, I've developed, I've advanced and matured and learned from my mistakes. So by no means have I done this perfectly, but I've always given it my best effort, and I've always given it an honest effort. I've always tried to do the right thing and continue to do that, hopefully until the last day that I coach.
That is fantastic. And you know what? You brought up all the mentors. I mean, the coaches. You brought up you gave some great kudos here today. And now, the famous saying, it's the wheel that turns, or when we say in Italian, la rota che gira. It comes back to you again now that you want to give back to other coaches. Listen, I want to kind of end it on a note here that it's no surprise. I just want to say it like this to you. As a young man growing up working for my father, I got a chance to meet your father. This was back in 1977, matter of fact, when I decided, okay, I'm going to deliver airline tickets for Venus Travel. And your father worked for a company here called Echo Housewares, and I met a great man named Wilfredo Ray. And Wilfredo and my father hit it off because of their backgrounds. And Will, what I saw today out of you, and I think you got this from Mom and Dad, Martha, you have an unbelievable work ethic. Your dad, for me, is that person that was like, wow, here's this immigrant man from Cuba, and how he was with my father, who was an immigrant from Italy, and the work ethic they have, and what we both took from them. It showed today in this interview. I have never had an interview about the passion that you showed today, and I want to truly thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you, John. And it's so great to just hear about I always knew of your dad, of course, because my dad always talked about him.
Yeah.
And so it's so wonderful to know that they had such a close friendship, because they shared a lot, and they valued a lot of the same things, right? They were both men who worked hard at their crafts and who raised their families and shared a lot of important things. And so thank you. And I can see a lot of that in you as well. So
thank you. I got to ask you, will you come back for a part 2?
Anytime, John. Anytime you want to get together, we'll do it. You just let me know.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be going out in a couple of days. We're going to go and show you the coach, Will Ray, who's had a tremendous career in basketball, but more importantly has passed this on to the lives of many young men, and it truly shows. And if you get a chance to see some of the things of Will on social media, and like I said, this interview will go out just fantastic, and finally got that chance to get to this, and I truly thank you for today.
Thanks, John.
Good night. Good day, everyone.